Hi, my name's Marga. I'm 41, and I'm here to tell you about the day I realized my dream husband and my grown daughter were starring in their own private romance movie, and I wasn't even listed in the credits. I went out for ground beef and came back as the unwilling director of a family drama that would make a soap opera writer say, "Whoa, that's a bit much." This is a confession about what happens when you're so afraid of being alone that you outsource your common sense. And how, sometimes, the people you love most don't just break your heart. They quietly, efficiently, dismantle your entire reality while you're in the other room folding laundry. So if you've ever ignored a gut feeling because it was too ugly to look at, grab a snack. This is why you should always listen to your gut. It doesn't have good manners, but it's never wrong. Let me set the stage properly. My origin story isn't special. It's classic single mom lore. My daughter Leah's father. Let's just say he took an early retirement package to a state-funded concrete hotel with complimentary orange jumpsuits. He checked out when Leah was still in pigtails, leaving me with a howling void of responsibility and a fear of my own shadow. So for a solid, grueling decade, it was me and my girl against the world. We were a dynamic duo, but let's be real. I was Batman, Robin, Alfred, and the guy who pays the light bill at Wayne Manor, all rolled into one perpetually exhausted, under-caffeinated woman. I was so deeply marinated in the struggle, I developed sophisticated opinions on it. You know you're in the trenches when you have a ranked list of which store brand mac and cheese has the most convincing, cheese-like product powder, and you can debate the merits of generic peanut butter with the fervor of a sommelier. My life was a carefully balanced act of paying the disconnection notice just in time, sewing name tags into school uniforms at 2 a.m., and trying to remember what my own hobbies were before I became a survivalist. Then enter Bob, not Bobby, just Bob, one syllable, solid, dependable, or so the brochure claimed. He was a regular at the coffee shop I managed, a place that smelled of burnt espresso beans and mild desperation. He was the kind of guy who didn't just complain about the wobbly table. He'd show up the next day with a tool kit and a level to fix it. He remembered my mom's name after hearing it once. He brought soup when I had the flu. He was profoundly, breathtakingly competent. To a woman who'd been her own plumber, therapist, accountant, and IT department for 10 years, competence isn't just attractive, it's a superpower. It's like, you mean you can not only identify a leak but also fix it without flooding the kitchen and having a spiritual crisis? Where have you been all my life? It felt less like romance and more like a tactical support unit had landed in my war zone. And with Leah, who was a shy, watchful teenager at the time, he was perfect. He didn't force a dad role. He was just a steady, calm presence. He'd be watching a game on TV, and she'd gradually migrate to the other end of the couch. He'd help her with math homework without making her feel stupid. He felt like a missing puzzle piece we didn't even know we were lacking. When he proposed, I didn't just see a ring. I saw a sigh of relief so deep it felt cellular. I saw a future where the weight wasn't solely on my shoulders. I saw a partner in the boring, glorious business of building a stable life. I was finally getting a co-CEO for Marga and Daughter, LLC. In my head, I was signing a merger agreement for happiness. I was so busy dancing at the signing ceremony, I didn't bother to have a lawyer look over the contract. Rookie mistake. Fast forward a few years, Leah blossoms. And I mean asterisk blossoms asterisk. She's no longer a gawky teen. She's a young woman, smart and beautiful, with a laugh that used to be my favorite sound in the world. And the atmosphere in our home, this home we built with Bob, begins to shift. It's not a quake, it's a continental drift. So slow you can only measure it over great distances of time. You know when you update an app on your phone and the icon looks almost asterisk the same, but when you open it, the entire user interface is different and you can't find anything. That was my family. The casing was familiar, but the operating system inside had been stealthily replaced. They developed a whole private ecosystem, their own Netflix profile, an inside joke graveyard I wasn't allowed to visit. They'd quote lines from shows I didn't watch. I'd walk into the kitchen, and their conversation would hit a pause button, just for a half second, before resuming at a slightly louder, more performative volume. "Hey, Mom, just telling Leah about this funny thing at work." It was like being the manager who accidentally walks into the employee break room. The casual vibe stiffens. Everyone remembers they're on the clock. The physical proximity was the real puzzle I kept trying to solve, and failing. It was a hug that seemed to involve the whole torso, not just the shoulders. It was her curling up on the couch, not on the other end, but right in the middle, her feet perilously close to his lap. It was him rubbing her shoulders after she complained about a long day, his thumbs working at the base of her neck, and her closing her eyes with a sigh that seemed to belong in a spa, not in our living room after a Tuesday. Once I saw her reach over and pick a piece of lint, a single microscopic fiber from the collar of his shirt. Her fingers were deft, her focus absolute. It wasn't a daughterly gesture. It was wifely. It was possessive. A cold trickle of something awful dripped down my spine. And my own mind became my worst enemy. I'd confront myself in the mirror of my own thoughts. You're being creepy, Marga. You're imagining things. You're sexualizing a normal, healthy bond because you're insecure. Maybe you're jealous of their closeness. Maybe you're the problem. I became a master gaslighter of myself. I was the prosecutor, defense attorney, and judge in the trial of my own intuition, and I always ruled in favor of dismissing the case. I'd actively shove the unease down, cover it with a mental tarp, and pretend the lump underneath wasn't there. I was so terrified of being the woman who ruined her own hard-won happiness with paranoia that I chose to be a fool. I committed to the bit. The bit was happy family, and I was going to play my role if it killed me. Then came the Tuesday. Not a Friday the 13th, not a stormy night. A sunny, stupid Tuesday. I was making a grocery list. Spaghetti night. Headed to the store, I called out, my voice chirpy with manufactured normalcy. Love you, came the dual chirp back from the living room, a perfect harmonic of deception. It was so sickeningly sweet it almost tasted bitter. But the moment my car cleared the driveway, my body rebelled. This wasn't anxiety. This was a full system alert. A primal klaxon blaring in my hindbrain. My stomach clenched into a cold fist. My palms were slick on the steering wheel. This was my lizard brain, the part that knows fire is hot and snakes are dangerous, finally bypassing all my rational defenses and screaming, "Turn back! Danger!" I didn't think. I just drove. I made a U-turn in the middle of the street, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I parked 2 houses down, my hands trembling. I felt like a spy, a thief, a stranger in my own story. I walked to my own home like it was a crime scene, which I suppose it was. The house was quiet, but it was a thick, expectant quiet, the quiet of a held breath. And then, drifting from the 2nd floor, from the direction of Leah's room, music, and underneath it, laughter. But not the kind of laughter that's loud and open. This was the low, intimate, shared secret kind of laughter. The kind that's meant for an audience of 2. It seeped through the walls and wrapped around my throat. I didn't go to the front door. I was drawn around the side of the house, pulled by a morbid, devastating gravity. Her bedroom window. The blinds were shut, but as always, one slat was bent. A cruel little peephole destiny had left for me. I looked, and the world didn't end with a bang. It ended with a terrible, silent clarity. There they were, in the soft afternoon light filtering through the bent blind. My husband, Bob, and my daughter, Leah, my adult daughter. They weren't talking. They weren't watching a movie. They were intertwined in a way that erased every father-daughter memory, every birthday hug, every proud side squeeze at graduation. It rewrote our entire history in a single, grotesque image. It was a tableau of such profound betrayal that my mind simply couldn't process it as real. It felt like I was watching a very well-acted, deeply disturbing play on a stage. I waited for the scene to end. I waited for someone to yell, "Cut!" I waited to wake up. My first coherent thought was absurdly clinical. Oh, so that's what that looks like from the outside. My brain had short-circuited and rebooted in detached observation mode. Subject A, male 50s. Subject B, female early 20s. Apparent activity, consensual interaction of an intimate nature. Location, secondary bedroom. Note, subjects share familial ties with observer. I was a cold, disembodied researcher documenting the extinction of my own happiness. I didn't cry, I didn't gasp, I didn't make a sound. I just stood there, frozen, the image burning itself onto the back of my eyelids forever. The buffer wheel in my mind spun and spun, unable to load the next moment of my life. I simply disconnected. What did I do next? The most insane thing imaginable. I went to the grocery store. I got back in my car, drove to the supermarket, and pushed a cart with steady hands. I stood in the pasta aisle staring at the rows of boxes. Linguine, penne, he prefers angel hair. The thought floated through the numb void in my head. He prefers angel hair, and I reached for it. I placed it in the cart. I picked out a jar of marinara. I selected a lettuce. I performed the entire ritual of normalcy. I made casual eye contact with Mrs. Henderson from down the street. I commented on the price of avocados to the cashier. I was an automaton, a perfect replica of Marga, running on the last dregs of its programming. I drove home. I carried the bags in. The house was different now. The air was different. It was all poisoned. "Get everything?" Bob asked, coming to take a bag from me. His fingers brushed against mine. A jolt, like touching a live wire, shot up my arm. I looked at his hand, the same hand that had been just an hour ago. "Yep," I heard my own voice say. It sounded perfectly normal, pleasant, even. It was as if my soul had evacuated and a very skilled voice actor was doing an impression of me from a remote studio. "Thanks, Mom," Leah said, emerging from the hallway. From her room, she had changed her shirt. She was wearing a soft, clean sweatshirt. The mundane detail was somehow the most horrific part. Of course she had changed. The casualness of the cover-up. She smiled at me. It was my daughter's smile, but I didn't recognize it anymore. It was a mask over a secret. That was the day I began living in the uncanny valley of my own existence. I now inhabit a life that is a near-perfect replica of my old one, but everything is off by 2 devastating degrees. Every dinner is a staged play. "How was your day?" is a line from the script. "This sauce is good," is my cue. I smile. I nod. I pass the Parmesan cheese to the man whose skin still probably carries the scent of my daughter's perfume. I listen to my daughter talk about her college classes, and I wonder what she's really thinking about. The cognitive dissonance is a physical pain, a constant, low-grade hum of nausea in my foundation. This isn't the dramatic torture of shouted accusations. It's the slow, excruciating torture of pristine, unbearable silence. It's the death of 1,000 perfectly normal moments. The nights are the longest. Lying in bed next to him, the space between us feels vast enough to hold all my shattered trust. The silence in the dark is a roaring noise. I stare at the ceiling and wonder, is he thinking about her right now? Is he replaying their afternoon? Is he comparing us? The rage that rises is so hot it feels like it will incinerate me from the inside out, but it has nowhere to go, so it cools into a heavy, permanent slab of ice in my chest. Sometimes I cry, but it's a silent, mechanical process. The tears just seep out, tracing cold paths to my ears. My face remains still. I am a monument to grief, slowly eroding in the dark. So here I am, confessing to the digital void because the real world offers no solace, only landmines. I am trapped in a labyrinth of my own making, and every exit is booby-trapped. Option A is the nuclear option. I become the screaming woman, the truth-teller. I would throw him out, my voice raw with the fury of a decade of betrayal. I would confront her, my words sharp and broken. And what would I get? A shattered house. A daughter who would look at me with pure, undiluted hatred. She would choose him, I know it. In her story, I would be the villain, the unstable, jealous mother who destroyed her happiness, who couldn't handle their special connection. I would be right. And I would be alone in that rightness, standing in the wreckage of my family, holding the truth like a trophy that's too heavy to lift and too ugly to display. Option B is the silent ghost. I could simply disappear, pack a single bag in the dead of night, leave a note that says nothing and everything. I know, goodbye. I would vanish from their narrative, but that feels like the ultimate cowardice. It feels like gifting my daughter, my child, to a predator with a bow on top. And then there's the worm of a thought that eats at me in my weakest moments. What if she's not a victim? What if she is a willing, eager participant? The thought is so vile it threatens to undo me. If I leave, am I abandoning a victim to her abuser, or am I merely stepping aside for 2 consenting adults? My mind recoils from both conclusions. Neither offers peace. Option C is the long con. I stay. I continue to smile, to cook, to fold his socks. I become the world's greatest actress, performing the role of wife and mother for the next 20-30 years. I preserve this hollow, beautiful shell of a family for the sake of what? Appearances. The fear of explaining my failed marriage on Facebook. Because the terrifying truth is, The profound, aching loneliness I felt before Bob might actually be preferable to this active, living betrayal. But I'm too scared to find out. I'm more afraid of the empty quiet of my own apartment than I am of the poisoned quiet of this shared bed. So I might just choose the slow death, the gradual erosion of my soul, because at least it's a familiar pain. I'm not asking for sympathy. I walked into this with my eyes wide shut. I mistook comfort for character and convenience for love. The due diligence was catastrophically lacking. My bad. What I'm asking for is perspective. What is the least worst path? If your life became a choose-your-own-adventure book where every chapter heading reads, "Welcome to a new circle of hell," which page do you reluctantly turn to? How do you take a step when the ground is made of quicksand and the horizon is on fire? My name is Marga. I am 41 years old. I live in a beautiful house with a beautiful family. And the two people I love most in this world built a secret, intimate world between them, a world with a door that has no key for me. The only membership requirement was my utter and complete betrayal, and I am the ghost that haunts its perfect, terrible edges.